The cranberry sauce had barely touched the china when my Aunt Vivian's words sliced through the warm November air like a blade through butter. "You'll die poor like your father, Celeste." 23 pairs of eyes turned toward me across the mahogany dining table. The conversation about Uncle Marcus's new boat died mid-sentence. Even my 5-year-old niece stopped coloring her turkey placemat. The only sound was the grandfather clock in the corner, ticking away seconds that felt like hours. I sat there, my fork suspended halfway to my mouth, mashed potatoes growing cold on the tines. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. Aunt Vivian's crimson lips curved into that familiar smirk, the same one she'd worn at every family gathering since I was 12. The same one that had haunted my dreams for decades. My father had been gone for 15 years, but his ghost still lived in this house. In the way people whispered when they thought I couldn't hear. In the pitying glances. In the careful way they avoided talking about money or success when I was around. But today was different. Today, I wasn't the broken little girl whose daddy had died leaving nothing but debt and broken promises. Today, I had something that would change everything. My hand trembled as I reached into my purse. The leather wallet felt heavier than usual, weighted down by more than just what was inside. It carried the weight of every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every moment I'd proven them all wrong. I opened it slowly, deliberately. The room held its breath. What I placed on that pristine white tablecloth would silence Aunt Vivian forever. But first, you need to know how we got here. You need to understand why this moment would shatter more than just the silence. Because what happened next would destroy more than just one woman's cruel words. It would unravel 30 years of lies, reveal a truth that had been buried deeper than my father's grave, and expose a secret that would change our family forever. But that's a story that begins long before this Thanksgiving dinner. A story that starts with a little girl who believed every cruel word and ends with a woman who discovered the most devastating truth of all. Hey everyone! Where are you watching from today? This story is just getting started, and trust me, you won't believe what Celeste puts on that table. If you're already hooked, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what you think Aunt Vivian's reaction will be, and don't forget to subscribe. 15 years earlier, I was 12 years old when the phone call came that changed everything. I remember the sound of rain against our kitchen window, the way it matched the tears streaming down my mother's face as she hung up. Dad had been gone for 3 days on what he called a business trip. Mom had been pacing the house like a caged animal, checking her phone every few minutes. "Celeste, honey, come sit with me." Her voice was different. Hollow. Like someone had scooped out all the warmth and left only an echo. "Daddy's not coming home," she whispered, pulling me onto her lap even though I was too old for that. There was an accident. But it wasn't just an accident. That was the first lie I believed. The truth came in pieces over the following weeks. Men in expensive suits knocked on our door, carrying thick folders and wearing expressions that said they'd rather be anywhere else. They used words like embezzlement and fraud and criminal charges. Dad hadn't died a hero. He died running away. The house I'd grown up in, with my purple bedroom and the tire swing out back, wasn't ours anymore. The car, the furniture, even my mother's wedding ring, everything had to go to pay back the money Dad had stolen from his company. And Aunt Vivian, Dad's own sister, watched it all happen from her mansion across town, never once offering to help. Never once defending her brother's memory. Instead, she whispered to anyone who would listen about how she'd always known Marcus would come to no good. The day we moved into the tiny apartment above Martina's grocery store, Aunt Vivian showed up with a casserole and that cruel smile. "Well, Celeste," she said, looking around our new home with obvious disgust, "I suppose this is your life now. Poor as church mice, just like your daddy always was deep down." I was 12, broken, and I believed her. That night, I made a promise to my reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror. I would never be poor again. I would never give anyone the chance to look down on me the way Aunt Vivian had looked down on us that day. I just never imagined it would take me 23 years to keep that promise, or that the truth about my father would be the key to everything. 5 years after Dad died, I learned what real hunger felt like. Not the kind where you skip lunch because you're not hungry. The kind where your stomach cramps so hard you can't sleep, where you drink water just to feel full, where you count every penny and still come up short. Mom worked 3 jobs cleaning houses for rich families in Millbrook Heights, the same neighborhood where Aunt Vivian lived in her pristine colonial with the perfect lawn. Sometimes I'd walk past her house on my way home from school, wondering if she ever thought about us. She didn't. But I was thinking about her the day my guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, called me into her office with news that would change my life. "Celeste, your grades are exceptional. There's a full scholarship to Northwestern for students in financial hardship. You could study business, maybe even economics." My hands shook as I held the application. A full ride to college. A chance to escape the tiny apartment, the smell of other people's leftover food, the weight of being Marcus Rivera's daughter. "There's just one thing," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "You'll need a character reference from a family member. Someone who can speak to your moral character and potential." My heart sank. Mom was working herself to death just to keep us afloat. She barely spoke English well enough for a phone call, let alone a formal reference. There was only one option. I walked to Aunt Vivian's house that evening, my pride crumbling with every step. The doorbell echoed through rooms I remembered from childhood, when Dad would bring me here for Sunday dinners and everything felt safe. "Well, well," she said, opening the door with that familiar look of distaste. "What brings little Celeste to my doorstep?" I explained about the scholarship, about needing her help. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something softer in her eyes. "A scholarship," she mused. "To Northwestern. That's quite impressive." Hope bloomed in my chest. "Of course, I'll help you," she said finally. I cried with relief right there on her marble steps. But 2 weeks later, I got the rejection letter. No explanation, just a form letter saying they'd chosen other candidates. Mrs. Patterson was confused. She'd never seen a student with my qualifications get rejected. It took me 3 months to discover the truth. A friend who worked in admissions told me what was in my file. A character reference that painted me as unreliable, dishonest, and likely to follow in my father's criminal footsteps. Aunt Vivian had sabotaged my future with a smile on her face. That night, I made my second promise. Not only would I never be poor, but I would make sure that when I succeeded, everyone who had tried to keep me down would witness it. Especially her. The rejection from Northwestern felt like a death sentence, but I refused to let it bury me. While other 18-year-olds were posting college acceptance photos on social media, I was learning a different kind of education. I took 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, working retail during the day, and tutoring kids on weekends. Every dollar went into 2 envelopes, one for Mom's medicine, one labeled Future. The cleaning job at Meridian Financial was where everything changed. I'd arrive at midnight when the executives were long gone, leaving behind conference rooms filled with whiteboards covered in numbers and strategies. Instead of just wiping them clean, I started studying them, learning their language, understanding how money really moved in the world. One night, I found a presentation left on a desk about cryptocurrency mining. This was 2019, and most people thought Bitcoin was just internet funny money. But I saw something different in those charts and projections. I spent my breaks reading everything I could find about blockchain technology, mining operations, and digital currencies. When I got home at 6 in the morning, instead of sleeping, I was researching. With my first $2,000 saved, I bought used mining equipment from a tech startup that was going out of business. I set it up in the basement of our apartment building, running cables through windows and praying Mrs. Chen upstairs wouldn't complain about the noise. For 6 months, I made exactly $43. Mom thought I'd lost my mind. "Mija, you're working yourself to death for imaginary money," she'd say, bringing me coffee while I monitored mining pools at 3 in the morning. But I remembered something Dad used to tell me before he became the man who disappointed everyone. "Celeste, the world belongs to people who see opportunity where others see problems." Then Bitcoin exploded. My $43 became $400. 400 became 4,000. 4,000 became numbers that made my hands shake when I looked at my mining pool account. By 2021, my little basement operation was generating more money in a month than Mom made in a year. By 2022, I'd bought the apartment building we lived in. By 2023, I owned 3 buildings and had investments that grew while I slept. But I told no one. Not my friends, not my mother, and definitely not my family. I kept living in the same small apartment, kept driving my beat-up Honda, kept wearing thrift store clothes. To the world, I was still poor little Celeste Rivera, the daughter of a thief. At family gatherings, I'd listen to Aunt Vivian brag about her husband's promotion, her new car, her latest vacation to Europe. I'd nod and smile and let her believe I was still struggling, still failing, still proving her right about the Rivera family curse. I was building something bigger than revenge. I was building power. And the most beautiful part? Nobody saw it coming. The night before Thanksgiving 2024, I sat in my real apartment, a penthouse I'd bought with cash, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, I would walk into that dining room carrying more wealth than everyone at that table combined. But first, I had one more truth to uncover. Something about my father that would change everything I thought I knew about our family. Mom died on a Tuesday in March, quietly in her sleep after a long battle with diabetes. I held her hand as she passed, whispering promises that she'd never have to worry about money again. While cleaning out her bedroom, I found a shoebox hidden behind winter coats she'd never worn. Inside were letters, bank statements, and documents that made my blood run cold. The first letter was in Dad's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before he died. Elena, my darling wife, if you're reading this, then they've found out about the money. But you need to know the truth. I didn't steal anything. I discovered that Gerald Whitmore, the company president, was embezzling millions from employee pensions. When I confronted him, he framed me instead. My hands trembled as I read further. I've hidden evidence in our safety deposit box. Bank statements, recorded conversations, documents that prove my innocence. But if I try to expose him now, he'll destroy us completely. He has connections, power, resources I can't fight. The second letter was addressed to me. My precious Celeste, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you probably think I'm a thief and a coward. The hardest part of dying isn't leaving you. It's knowing you'll grow up believing I was a criminal when all I did was try to do the right thing. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. Gerald Whitmore stole $15 million from hardworking people's retirement funds. He destroyed families. When I found proof, he made sure I'd never be able to tell anyone. He owns the police chief, the district attorney, even some judges. Fighting him would have meant losing everything and putting you and your mother in danger. But someday, when you're old enough and strong enough, I pray you'll find this letter and finish what I started. The safety deposit box key is taped under your childhood jewelry box. Box 1247 at First National Bank. My father wasn't a thief. He was a whistleblower who died protecting us from a man powerful enough to destroy anyone who opposed him. And Gerald Whitmore? He was Aunt Vivian's husband. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why she'd never helped us after Dad died. Why she'd sabotaged my scholarship. Why she'd spent 15 years making sure I stayed small and powerless. She knew the truth. She'd always known. The next morning, I went to the bank with trembling hands. Inside box 1247 were bank records, recorded phone conversations, and emails that proved Gerald Whitmore had stolen millions from his own company's pension fund, then framed my father when he got too close to the truth. But the most shocking document was a life insurance policy I'd never known existed. A $2 million policy that should have paid out when Dad died, but was blocked because of the criminal charges against him. With proof of his innocence, that policy would finally pay out. With interest and penalties, it was worth nearly $4 million now. I sat in that bank vault holding the evidence that would not only clear my father's name, but destroy the man who'd stolen our lives. Gerald Whitmore had built his fortune on stolen pension money. He'd used that money to buy his mansion, his boats, his perfect life with Aunt Vivian. And tomorrow, at Thanksgiving dinner, I was going to take it all away from them. But I wasn't just going to expose him. I was going to do it in front of the entire family, in front of everyone who'd spent 15 years believing my father was a criminal. The little girl who'd been told she'd die poor like her father was about to prove that her father was the most honorable man at that table. and his sister had known it all along. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with Dad's evidence spread out like battle plans, making phone calls that would change everything. The first call was to Detective Sarah Morrison, the one honest cop I'd found through months of research. She'd been investigating white-collar crime for 20 years and had a reputation for taking down powerful men who thought they were untouchable. Ms. Rivera, I've been hoping someone would come forward with evidence against Whitmore for years. We suspected, but could never prove it. You'll have everything you need by Monday, I told her. But I need you to wait until Friday to make the arrest. I want him to have one last perfect Thanksgiving with my aunt before his world ends. The second call was to James Chin, the investigative journalist who'd exposed 3 major embezzlement scandals in the past 5 years. When I told him what I had, he was silent for so long I thought the call had dropped. Celeste, this is huge. Whitmore's company manages pension funds for half the state. We're talking about thousands of victims, hundreds of millions in stolen money. I want the story to break Saturday morning, I said. Front page. I want everyone to see what kind of man my aunt married. The third call was to my cousin Rebecca, Vivian's daughter, who worked in public relations. She'd always been kind to me, even when her mother wasn't. Rebecca, I need you to trust me. Don't go to your parents' house on Black Friday. Don't answer their calls. Just take your kids somewhere far away for the weekend. Celeste, you're scaring me. What's going on? Your father isn't who you think he is. And after tomorrow, nothing will ever be the same. Thursday morning, I put on my oldest dress, the one I'd worn to job interviews when I was desperate. I drove my beat-up Honda to Aunt Vivian's house, carrying my worn purse with its cracked leather wallet. Inside that wallet was a cashier's check for $8.7 million. The life insurance payout, plus the settlement my lawyers had negotiated with Whitmore's company for wrongful termination and defamation of my father. $8.7 million that legally belonged to my father's estate. Money that should have saved us from those years of poverty, from Mom working herself to death, from all the shame and struggle we'd endured because of Gerald Whitmore's lies. But that wasn't all I was carrying. In my phone were photos of every document, every bank record, every piece of evidence that would send Gerald Whitmore to prison for the rest of his life. Evidence that would destroy the empire he'd built on stolen money and my father's grave. As I walked up their marble steps, I thought about the last 15 years. The nights I'd gone to bed hungry. The college scholarship I'd been denied because of Vivian's lies. The way she'd looked at me like I was garbage, like I deserved nothing, because I was Marcus Rivera's daughter. Today, she would learn who Marcus Rivera really was. Today, she would discover that the man she'd destroyed was worth more than her husband had ever been. And today, the daughter she'd tried to keep down would rise higher than any of them had ever dreamed possible. The doorbell rang through their perfect house, and I smiled. Let the games begin. Aunt Vivian opened the door wearing her signature pearl necklace and that practiced smile she reserved for people she considered beneath her. Celeste, how nice of you to join us, she said, her eyes scanning my old dress with obvious disapproval. Though I do wish you'd made more of an effort. This is Thanksgiving dinner, not a soup kitchen. I smiled and stepped inside, breathing in the scent of expensive candles and her husband's guilt. Gerald Whitmore sat at the head of the table like a king, carving the turkey with steady hands that had stolen millions. He looked up when I entered, and for just a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition? Fear? The table was set for 23 people, filled with cousins, second cousins, and family friends who'd spent years watching our little soap opera. They all knew the story: Celeste, the poor relation, the daughter of the criminal. The cautionary tale they told their children about making bad choices. Everyone, Celeste is here, Vivian announced, her voice carrying that subtle mockery she'd perfected over the years. Though I'm surprised she could afford the gas money to drive here. A few people chuckled uncomfortably. Gerald's business partner, Thomas Blackwood, actually snorted. Still living in that tiny apartment above the grocery store, Celeste? Actually, I said, taking my seat at the far end of the table. I moved out of there a few years ago. More polite conversation followed. Questions about my job, my life, my prospects, all delivered with that particular brand of family concern that feels more like judgment. I answered honestly. Yes, I was still single. No, I hadn't gone to college. Yes, I was working hard to get by. The lies came so easily because they were mostly true. I just left out a few details about cryptocurrency mining and real estate investments and the 8-figure net worth I'd built while they weren't paying attention. As the evening wore on, I watched Gerald Whitmore play the role of successful family patriarch. He talked about his latest business deals, his charitable donations, his plans to expand the company. Every word was poison to me, knowing it was all built on money stolen from hardworking families. But it was Vivian who sealed her fate. You know, Gerald, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear, I was just thinking about poor Marcus today. Wondering what he'd think of his daughter now. Still struggling, still making poor choices, just like he did. The table went quiet. This was the moment she'd been building toward all evening, her annual reminder to everyone about what happens to people like us. He was always a dreamer, my brother, she continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Always thought he was smarter than everyone else. Look where it got him. Gerald nodded solemnly. Marcus was brilliant, but he made some terrible decisions. The embezzlement, the way he died running from his crimes. Such a tragedy. A tragedy that didn't have to happen, Vivian agreed. If he'd just been honest, if he'd worked hard like normal people instead of trying to steal his way to success. She turned to me with that cruel smile. I suppose that's why you'll die poor like your father, Celeste. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. 23 pairs of eyes turned toward me. This was it. The moment I'd been waiting 15 years for. I reached into my purse and pulled out my wallet with trembling hands. You're right about one thing, Aunt Vivian, I said, my voice steady and clear. My father and I are exactly alike. I opened the wallet and placed the cashier's check on the white tablecloth. The silence that followed was deafening. The check lay on the pristine white tablecloth like a bomb waiting to explode. $8,700,000. Made out to Celeste Rivera. From Meridian Life Insurance Company. Vivian's face went through a series of colors, from pale pink to deep red to a shade of white I'd never seen on a living person. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's, she whispered, leaning forward to read the numbers again. That's not real. It's very real, I said calmly, standing up from my chair. It's my father's life insurance policy. The one that was blocked for 15 years because he was accused of being a criminal. Gerald Whitmore's fork clattered onto his plate. The sound echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. You see, I continued, walking slowly around the table, it turns out my father wasn't a thief after all. Funny how these things work out. I pulled out my phone and began reading from the documents I'd photographed. Marcus Rivera, employee number 4471, discovered systematic embezzlement of employee pension funds totaling $15.7 million between 2007 and 2009. When he reported this to company leadership, he was framed for the very crimes he was trying to expose. Thomas Blackwood was staring at Gerald now, pieces clicking together in his mind. Gerald, what is she talking about? This is ridiculous, Gerald stammered, but his voice had lost all its authority. This girl is clearly delusional, just like her father was. Am I? I asked, stopping directly behind his chair. Because I also have bank records. Recorded phone conversations. Email chains. All proving that you stole money from hardworking families and let my father die believing he was disgraced. I looked around the table at faces that had shown me pity and contempt for 15 years. My father died protecting me and my mother from a man who had the power to destroy us completely. He knew that if he fought back, Gerald would hurt us too. So he took the blame, took the shame, and died so we could live. My voice grew stronger with each word. But here's what none of you knew. While you were all feeling sorry for poor little Celeste, while you were whispering about my father's crimes, I was building something. I was investing, learning, growing. I walked back to my seat and sat down, looking directly at Vivian. That check? That's just the beginning. I own 17 properties across 3 states. I have investments worth more than everyone at this table combined. And tomorrow morning, when the FBI arrests your husband for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy, I'll be the one buying his assets at auction. The room erupted in shocked voices, accusations, denials. But through it all, Vivian sat frozen, staring at the check that represented everything she'd tried to keep from me. "You sabotaged my scholarship," I said to her quietly, my voice cutting through the chaos. "You made sure I stayed small, stayed poor, stayed ashamed. You did that to your own brother's daughter while you lived in luxury bought with stolen money." "I didn't know," she whispered, but her eyes betrayed the lie. "You knew," I said simply. "You've always known. That's why you worked so hard to keep me down. Because you were terrified that someday I'd discover the truth." I picked up the check and put it back in my wallet. My father was the most honest man in this room. And now everyone will know it. Gerald Whitmore stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward. "I need to make a phone call." "The phones won't help you, Gerald," I said without looking at him. "Detective Morrison is already on her way." The doorbell rang at exactly 8:47 p.m. Gerald Whitmore went rigid in his chair, his face the color of old newspaper. Through the dining room windows, we could see the red and blue lights painting the perfectly manicured lawn in alternating shades of justice. "FBI, open up." Vivian's crystal wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered against the hardwood floor, the sound echoing like her world breaking apart. Detective Morrison walked in wearing a bulletproof vest and carrying a warrant that would change everything. Behind her came 3 federal agents and enough evidence boxes to carry away 15 years of lies. "Gerald Whitmore, you're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering." The words I'd dreamed of hearing for months filled the dining room like music. Gerald tried to run. Actually ran toward the back door like a scared rabbit, but Agent Collins was already waiting there. They brought him back in handcuffs, past the turkey that was still warm on his mother-in-law's best china. "This is a mistake," he kept saying over and over. "I'm a respected businessman. I donate to police charities." "You stole $17.2 million from working families' retirement funds," Detective Morrison said coldly. "Some of these people lost their entire life savings because of you." As they led him away, Gerald looked back at me with something between hatred and respect. "You planned this," he said. "You planned all of this." "No," I replied. "My father planned this. I just finished what he started." The room emptied quickly after that. Family members who'd spent years judging me suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. Cousins who'd whispered about my father's crimes slipped out the back door without saying goodbye. Thomas Blackwood stopped on his way out, his face pale with the realization that his business partner had been a criminal all along. "Celeste, I need you to know I never suspected. If I had known what Gerald was doing to your father, to your family." "It's okay, Mr. Blackwood," I said. "You weren't the one who was supposed to protect me." I looked at Vivian, who was still sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by the ruins of her perfect dinner party. But she was. Within an hour, the house was empty except for me and my aunt. She sat in her perfect dining room, in her perfect dress, wearing her perfect pearls, while her perfect world crumbled around her. 15 years, I said quietly. For 15 years, you let everyone believe my father was a criminal. You let me grow up thinking I was the daughter of a thief." She finally looked at me, and for the first time in my life, Vivian looked small. "I didn't know Gerald had framed him," she whispered. "Not at first. I thought Marcus really had stolen that money." "When did you find out?" Her silence stretched between us like a chasm. "When?" I demanded. 3 years after the funeral, she admitted. "I found documents in Gerald's study. Bank records. I confronted him, and he told me everything. 3 years after Dad died. 12 years ago. She'd known the truth for 12 years and let us suffer anyway. You could have cleared his name," I said. "You could have helped us. You could have told the truth." Gerald said if I exposed him, we'd lose everything. The house, the cars, Rebecca's college fund. Everything we'd built. Built on stolen money. I was protecting my family. I was your family too. The words exploded out of me with 15 years of pain behind them. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "You were my father's sister. I was your niece. And you chose a criminal over your own blood." I walked to the window and looked out at the flashing police lights, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. "I could destroy you now," I said without turning around. Gerald's assets will be frozen, his accounts seized. This house, your cars, your lifestyle, all of it was bought with stolen money. The FBI will take everything. She was crying now, quiet tears that spoke of a lifetime of choices she couldn't take back. I stood in Vivian's destroyed dining room, surrounded by broken crystal and the remnants of her perfect facade. She sat hunched over in her chair, no longer the powerful matriarch who'd tormented me for 15 years, but a broken woman facing the consequences of her choices. "There's one more thing you need to know," I said, pulling out the final document from my purse. "Something I discovered yesterday that changes everything." Her eyes were red-rimmed and hollow as she looked up at me. Gerald didn't just steal pension money. He stole from Dad's personal account too. The college fund Dad had been building for me since I was born. $57,000 that was supposed to pay for my education. I placed the bank statement on the table between us. When Gerald framed Dad, he made sure to empty that account too. Covered his tracks by making it look like Dad had gambled it away. Vivian stared at the numbers, her face growing paler. "That scholarship I applied for? The one you sabotaged with your character reference? I never needed it. I had my own college fund the whole time. Gerald stole my future twice, and you helped him do it." "Celeste, But here's what neither of you understood," I continued, my voice growing stronger. "You didn't break me. Every cruel word, every sabotage, every moment you tried to make me feel small, you were actually building something inside me. You were creating someone who would never stop fighting. I could let you lose it all. I could watch you end up poor and struggling like Mom, and I did. I could make you feel what it's like to have nothing while everyone whispers about your shame." I turned back to face her. "But I'm not you, Vivian. And I'm not Gerald." From my purse, I pulled out one more document. A deed. "This house, your house, I'm buying it from the federal auction tomorrow. Cash offer, no financing needed." Her eyes widened in confusion. "I'm buying it, and I'm giving it to Rebecca and her children. Your daughter deserves a home, even if you don't deserve mercy." The deed was already signed, the money already transferred. By tomorrow evening, Rebecca would own the house she'd grown up in, free and clear. "As for you," I continued, "you'll have 30 days to find somewhere else to live. I suggest you use that time to think about the choices you've made and the family you destroyed." I walked toward the door, then stopped. "There's a small apartment available above the Martinez grocery store. Same one Mom and I lived in after Dad died. Mrs. Martinez said she'd consider renting to you, assuming you can pass the background check." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Celeste," she called out as I reached the doorway. "What do you want me to tell people?" "About Gerald, about what happened tonight." I smiled, and for the first time in 15 years, it wasn't bitter or angry. It was the smile of someone who had finally found peace. "Tell them the truth," I said. "Tell them Marcus Rivera was an honest man who died protecting his family from a criminal. Tell them his daughter grew up to be everything he hoped she would be." I walked out into the cool November night, leaving behind the woman who'd tried so hard to keep me small. Behind me, I could hear her crying, finally mourning not just for what she'd lost, but for what she'd done. My phone rang as I got to my car. It was Rebecca. "Celeste, I just saw the news about Dad. Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," I said, and meant it. "And I have some good news for you about your house." As I drove away from that perfect neighborhood with its perfect lawns and perfect lies, I thought about my father. About the man who'd chosen to die with honor rather than fight back and risk hurting his family. About the daughter who'd found a way to seek justice without becoming the very evil she was fighting. The girl who was told she'd die poor like her father had discovered something better than wealth, more powerful than revenge. She'd found the truth. And the truth, as it always does, had set everyone free. Even Aunt Vivian, whether she knew it yet or not. If you loved this story, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I have more incredible stories coming that will blow your mind. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about the power of never giving up, no matter how hard people try to keep you down.